Okay, so here we are. All right. Okay. And see, so this is everybody sees this.
Wow.
Yeah, it's very janky.
Wow. How many people do we have watching this?
Probably 50 or something.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is straight. Okay. There we
Yes.
go. Make sure we're all.
And then search.
Come on.
And then attached. Da-da-da. Did you get any more questions? Gotta find the earlier email. Okay, she's about to press the button.
Is that
Yeah, we'll be okay.
Yeah.
We'll be okay.
Okay.
I think so. Oh, hi everybody. Hi everybody. I hope you're having a beautiful morning. I'm Missy Paskey Wood, as usual. I'm your community resource director here at Hacienda at the Canyon. And if you notice, we are actually in a different setting today. This is maybe a place that some of you haven't even seen. This is on the first floor, right off of the lobby, there's a little nook that is a little living room, and it's really lovely. And here is the special feature that I wanted to make sure you saw. There's a TV down here, so I get to watch as we are doing this. It's tuned to channel 77, so I'll be distracted by looking at myself the whole time. But that's okay, we're gonna power through it. I would like to introduce Lynn Olkey.
Hi, everyone.
She is a doctor of psychology. And yes, at Tucson Medical Center. And we're so excited to have you here today. You may have received, or you did receive, I'm just gonna push this back a little bit more. Okay, that's perfect. So you received in your bags overnight a flyer, just one page, that had this on the front, and it says Face COVID, and on the back it had a list of resources. And thank you, Lynn, for putting this together for us. And this morning you are going to share with us about this concept that was created, and then we have a little bit of time for questions as well.
Great.
Is that right?
That sounds perfect.
Okay.
You got it.
Thank you, Lynn.
Missy.
All right,
Thank
and
you.
I'll just pop in when I think that there's something that we could contribute here from, but the floor is yours.
Feel free. Thank you so much for having me today. So I know there's a lot of just questions and concerns surrounding really at this time. It's been a difficult time for so many people. So I've been looking into what can the research tell us about how are people typically responding right now? What's a common reaction to quarantine? What are the effects of quarantine? And I found this article that came out quite recently. They pulled this together, in the middle of as the pandemic was beginning. It's called The Psychological Impact of Quarantine: How to Respond to It. And they looked at a variety. It was a review article. Looked at a variety of different studies for people who had been in quarantine before, through the SARS outbreak, Ebola, the swine flu.
Yes, it could be worse. It could be Ebola. Maybe we need to be remembering that.
It reminded me, this has happened before, right? We're not the only ones that have gone through this. And they looked at the psychological effects. What were people reporting that they were feeling at that time? And they really found the psychological effects can be pretty wide-ranging. Not a surprise, that the most common responses were low mood, feeling depression, irritability. Those were the most common responses they found. And then, of course, a lot of other reactions like fear, having trouble sleeping, insomnia, lots of anger, frustration surrounding that loss of usual routine, being more socially isolated, and people just not feeling that they don't have adequate supplies. So there was a lot of anger about that. Feeling emotionally exhausted, feeling guilty, numbness, and confusion too about the mixed messages from public health authorities. The messages are changing, so not quite knowing what to do a lot of times. So this has all happened before. It's not just us. Oh, another thing people reported was a lot of boredom.
Boredom.
Not having enough.
Yeah. I have people come in and tell me about that. A lot of the things that you mentioned, I know our members have mentioned. I definitely have had people come in and tell me that they are depressed. I've had people tell me that they're having trouble sleeping or anxiety, boredom for sure. And I think I'm witnessing irritability.
And maybe feeling a little bit too.
Not even just with our members, but with myself or with my family or with all of those things. So it sounds like
really resonates.
Absolutely.
Sure. They also had, in a couple of these studies, they looked at the long-term effects of the outbreak as well, and found that a lot of these feelings did persist over time, unfortunately. Even after the quarantine ended, we've got some things to look out for. Rates of substance abuse went up quite a bit. And lots of avoidance behaviors persisted even after the quarantine. People were still feeling really uncomfortable with going out in public spaces, feeling uncomfortable when they're in enclosed spaces with crowds, and even past the point where that was, a thing to look out for.
Yeah.
People were still afraid.
You get out of the habit, right?
Feeling really fearful. Yeah, exactly. And that anger seemed to persist too. They looked about 6 months after quarantine. People were still angry about not having the supplies through all of that they needed. So
supplies. What kind of supplies? You mean just
basic supplies, like having enough food, and going to the store, and we've all gone through that. The toilet paper and the hand sanitizer not being available. So that's created a lot of frustration for people. Yeah. So what to do about it? Let's move into talking about that. So we've got your handout, the face COVID handout. We're going to go over that next.
And I'll just get it a little closer just to remind you. That's the one.
That's the one. Yes. So I found this, and it's part of, there's a type of therapy called acceptance and commitment therapy. And
acceptance and commitment
therapy. It uses a lot of mindfulness techniques to help us cope with what's going on right now. And there was an author of a book called The Happiness Trap, Dr. Russ Harris, and he put out this, it's some steps that we can follow to help us cope more effectively. So he called it Face COVID. A nice handy acronym we can use. I love acronyms.
Listen, we don't have a choice, really. So we're facing it whether we want to
or not. Yes. So we've got these different, like each letter, we've got something to take away then and remember to help us, right?
So, I like that.
Yeah. So the first letter is F for focus on what's in your control.
Okay.
Focus on what's in your control. So there's so many things happening right now with coronavirus and this pandemic that certainly are out of our control, right? It's affecting us all psychologically, socially, physically, emotionally, economically. A lot of that's out of our control, unfortunately. And really, when we're facing a crisis of any sort, right, it's inevitable to have some fear and anxiety. That's actually a very natural and normal response when you're in a challenging situation and there's a lot of danger and uncertainty. It's normal. It's normal to feel these emotions that we've talked about. The problem is that when we get so wrapped up in the emotions that then we start to, worry more frequently. We have lots of worries, and then at that point, it's not useful or helpful to us when we start to worry too much.
I think that's happening quite a bit, because we'll have people who come down and ask every day, when will this end? Do you think it will end? And of course it will. But also, I have no idea. And that it just shows that it's out of our control. And we just have to,
as much as we'd like to be able to handle it all effectively and control it, we just can't. That's the reality of it. The part of it that we can control is what we do.
Okay.
What we choose, how we choose to behave, what we choose to do. That's a part where we can really start to take some action. So you can kind of think of it like, a storm's brewing. There's a storm brewing. There's some ships that are in the harbor.
Okay.
And what happens to these ships, right? If they don't put down an anchor, they're all going to get swept out to sea. The ships are going to get swept out to sea. So they've got to put down that anchor. So just like those ships with the storm, right? We've got this storm, the crisis right now that we've got going. It's the storm that's brewing, and we're going to go through more storms in life as well. So this advice could apply even later.
Sure.
But we've got to learn to put down some sort of anchor, or else our emotions are going to get swept away to sea. We're going to get so caught up in our emotions. So How do we put down an anger then?
Okay.
All right, so that's what we're going to look at next with the next 3 letters of Face COVID. We've got the A, the C, and the E on your handout. And that's where we're going to drop our anchor so we don't get swept away. So A is for acknowledge your thoughts and feelings.
Okay.
It sounds simple, but no.
Listen, I mean, how many years of therapy, right? Do you have to before you get to that space?
Right. Acknowledge what's going on inside of you. You know, is there so much of this we're trying to maybe control our thoughts so much or block them out or distract ourselves from these difficult feelings we have? A lot of times that works against us when we do that. So really all we've got to do here is just kind of kindly do this, kindly acknowledge what's going on. Take a minute to slow down and say, what are my thoughts right now? What kinds of thoughts am I having about this? What kinds of feelings am I having? Emotions, memories, sensations, urges, just observing all of that like a scientist would, right? If they're a scientist is going to investigate something.
And so what do you,
so like if
you're observing those things, you're pausing with them. What to keep them from rolling around again, what do you do? Is that when you write them down? What do you do to acknowledge them?
So instead of really it's the pause that you're
the pause.
It's just the pause, right? Is we're getting caught up in emotions. A lot of times we just end up it's snowballing and then we react, right? We do something just sort of reactive to those emotions without slowing down, taking a minute to just stop and think. So there's a pause there that goes on. Stop, acknowledge whatever it is. Don't try to change it, but you're noticing I'm feeling a lot of fear today, a lot of uncertainty about what's going on, and I have this particular worried thought that I just keep having over and over again, right? So it's observing there, but not judging it or doing anything with it. Okay. And then the next step is the letter C, right? Of Face COVID, letter C, connect with your body. So just connecting with the physical sensations that you're having. So there's a couple different ways you could do this. Try what feels good to you. You could try just slowly pushing your feet down onto the floor just to try to ground yourself.
Yes, I know that we have other meditation classes and some other things, and I remember that being one of the things that, like I know that Leah for yoga on Sundays does that, where you sit in the chair and you're feeling your feet planted on the floor, and then you feel your hands on the arms, or you feel your hands on your knees, and you just plant, feel the roots go down and plant yourself.
All of that works.
Stillness.
Yeah, feeling yourself just sitting up more straight, right? Connecting with your spine. Pushing your fingertips together. Some people like that little exercise just to kind of connect in, right? It's just to help you focus in on your body.
Interesting.
Pushing your fingertips together, or shrugging your shoulders, or doing a little stretching with your neck and your arms. Even just breathing slowly. That's another.
Like the in 4, out 8, pause 4, in 4, out 8, pause 4.
So all of that is helping you to connect with your body.
Okay.
And then, I should mention though, as we're doing that, we still want to make sure that we're connecting in with the thoughts and feelings, because the connecting with the body exercise is not designed to distract us from the thoughts and feelings. We still want to acknowledge what those are as we're doing these other steps. So next we've got the letter E for engage in what you're doing. So we're getting a sense of where you are and just refocus your attention to whatever it is that you're doing. Right? If we get caught up in thoughts and feelings, we often get really distracted from whatever it is that we're doing. So there's a couple of different ways you could try this. Just looking around the room, notice 5 things that are in the room. Just take a moment to observe them and focus on them. Or things that you can hear, or things that maybe you can smell or taste, right? Or just engaging the senses here. And then last, if you're in some kind of activity, you're doing an activity, focus in on that activity at hand.
And we have a lot of those. And one of the things that I had mentioned to you before was that we had different silly things in our, like we have a takeaway table. And so some of our members have really embraced sort of, all right, this is kind of silly, but I'm going to do it because it's going to be a distraction, and maybe when would I have done this before? Normally I wouldn't have. But then I do have other members who say, oh, that's not for me. And I do wonder if, we've got nothing but time. And so maybe distracting yourself with something that may even seem, I hate to use the word childish, but might because art making, I think sometimes people associate with childhood. And,
Right.
you know, to try something new and engage with something, not as a distraction, but, you know, as a way to process and feel like you're accomplishing something or feel
Right.
like you're, I don't know.
Yeah, and I can relate to that with some people at Geropsych that I work with there have that reaction to some of the activities we're having. Oh, this seems kind of childish, or it's not something I would normally do.
Yeah.
I try to remind them really the idea is there's a lot of benefit that can come from that with just even being, you know, if you're able to be with other people now, not as much. But that would, you know, in the past that was a benefit. But the other thing has to do with even staying engaged and challenging yourself mentally, right?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of different ways you can challenge yourself. It might be something creative that you need
Sure.
to challenge yourself, but that is important as we get older to stay mentally active as well, you know, and it helps actually to prevent cognitive decline. There's studies that have shown that.
Yeah.
So it's important for a lot of different reasons, and maybe even just the idea of trying something new. It might be a good time right now. I've talked to a lot of people who are just craving that novelty because their day-to-day things become so routine. So
That's true.
you know, just trying something
Just trying to
different,
mix
getting
it up.
outside your comfort zone a little bit can be
Okay.
really good.
Outside your comfort zone. All right. Well, I think
Just a little bit.
I think we're about to introduce some origami setup. So maybe that could be another challenge that if you've never done this before, let's give it a whirl.
Right.
It doesn't matter if you know, you never know.
Exactly. And those are the kinds of activities that actually are more likely to prevent cognitive decline, activities that bring people.
Say it louder,
Outside of their
because that's the
comfort zone.
number one thing everybody asks. So what kind of activities prevent cognitive?
Something that brings you a little outside of your comfort zone. You don't want to go too far, but just a little bit of a new challenge, something different. People always ask me about crossword puzzles. Should I do crossword puzzles? Well, you know, if you're doing that every single day and you're doing the same thing every day, it's probably not going to challenge you much anymore. So what else could you try? Maybe there's something a new hobby, something you've never done before.
Sure.
And you've always wanted to try.
Or
Now's
just
a
give
good
it
time for that.
Yeah. Throw some spaghetti at the wall, see what sticks, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Exactly.
Interesting.
Yeah. So as we're talking about that dropping the anchor then, the A, the C, and the E, it might take a few times cycling through that to start to feel calmer or more grounded. So you could try that, run through it 2 or 3 times. And, you know, there also are some audio recordings that you can follow along with. A lot of people say, gee, I don't know, you know, this seems sort of, you know, strange what you're talking about. I've never done this before. Well, there's some audio recordings that can help.
Like guided meditations?
Like a guided meditation.
Okay.
Yeah.
We do guided meditations every morning at 8:45.
Okay.
People can turn on the TV for a short guided meditation.
Great.
And then last month, or was it the month before? I don't know. We did a whole series, or not a series, we did a whole session on podcasts. And I know that there's some of those apps that are free and different podcasts that are guided meditations. So if that's interesting to you, come down and see us and we'd be happy to get you set up so that you can do those.
And additionally, on the handout, if you flip it over to the back side, of the resources, right at the very bottom, there was one that I put on there.
There it is, Recordings to Practice Face COVID.
Yeah, and it's got and so look for the dropping anchor exercises as you go into that webpage. There's a few on there for dropping anchor. So that'll take you right through those steps that we just went through, the A, the C, and the E.
Thank you.
Yeah, there's different ones varying from less than a minute to 11 minutes, depending on how much you want to get into it.
Sure.
There's different choices there. So the next letter we have is
now we're on to COVID. We did face.
We finally got
We
to
did
COVID.
face, which is fun. It's beautiful. And now we're to
Oh,
COVID.
now we've
So
got COVID.
buckle up,
COVID's good.
everybody. Here we go.
COVID's got some good tips in there.
So C for committed action.
Committed action. So this has to do with not just reacting to emotions and not thinking. Committed action has to do with really being mindful about what it is that we're doing and making sure that that connects to our values, to whatever is important to us, right? Whatever it is, whether it's kindness or respect or honesty, integrity, right? Think about what it is that you value, what you find important, and how can you behave in a manner that's consistent with those values. That leads to more meaningful, more purposeful life when we do that. So this was a great question in here. What can I do right now, no matter how small it may be, that improves life for myself or others I live with or people in my community? Right? So that's something you could ask yourself every day.
Yeah.
What is something I can do right now? It could just be something very small. You don't have to do something monumental to take committed action. This is about just day to day, just being mindful and living purposefully.
I have a friend who, while she's been in quarantine, she's been sending, I think it's like a postcard a day. And so, because we often, you may have a friend that you don't see very often, but you still think you're fond of or whatnot. And so she has been, I think, using her Christmas card list and just sending a "Hey, thinking of you" postcard. And it was just so refreshing to get a piece of mail that just, it was just a silly thing. And it's been something that she's been doing every day, and a different person gets the postcard. And
it makes other people feel good too. It makes her feel good. Everyone's more connected. That's really beautiful.
And supports the post office, which I guess we need to be doing that as well.
Exactly. So it could be some kind words to someone. It could be some sort of task. You're helping someone with a task, or something that you enjoy doing, a way to comfort someone, soothe them.
We have this system called LifeLoop that has the directory, and then I think there's also printed directories that our members have. And I wonder if maybe if you're feeling isolated, just going down the list and maybe calling somebody you don't know and saying, "Hey, I see we're on the same floor," or "I wanted to introduce myself." I think that there's a lot of ways that we could support our community within our building and without.
And we're missing that kind of conversation right now. That the conversation that we have with someone that we're just meeting for the first time is different than talking to a loved one or a relative or an old friend. We might actually, a lot of us are getting probably more of that right now. At least we can call, but not getting to really just get to know people.
Yeah.
So
small talk is kind of fun sometimes. You get to learn new things about people. And before we started this recording, Lynn and I were talking about music, and we learned a whole lot about each other. So it's fun.
It was nice. Yes, absolutely. So the next letter is O for opening up. So opening up means making room for the difficult feelings and the thoughts. Right? We're not trying to push those away. Again, we're trying to open up and make space for those to be there. So those feelings, sometimes if we try to take so much action to get rid of the thoughts and feelings, it can actually build up and make those feelings and thoughts intensify.
Yeah.
So again, we're opening up, right? We're allowing them to be there. So really, to do that, we've got to be kind to ourselves and say it is normal and natural to have these feelings right now. I'm not the only one who's having these thoughts and feelings. Believe me, you're not. It's okay, and it's okay for those to be there. They will pass. Emotions do. They don't last forever. They're always transient. But there's things that we can do to just sort of naturally allow them to pass. We can choose to allow them to pass, or we can do things that make them intensify.
Sure.
But this is really self-compassion, kindness towards ourselves, being kind, forgiving ourselves. Often we're our own harshest critic, unfortunately, kind and forgiving to other people, but then harsh on ourselves. So it's really important right now. It's probably one of the most critical things we can do in any crisis is allow ourselves a little bit more leeway than we normally would. So maybe it means letting yourself have more sleep, giving yourself an extra, or taking time to do something that just feels like pampering. It just feels really good. You may not normally splurge on something, but you're doing it right now. You need to give yourself a little bit extra self-care, having a nice healthy meal, taking some extra time to get ready in the morning, even if you're not going to see anybody, still getting up and putting yourself together nicely.
There's this whole series of YouTube videos that you've probably seen. I'm not sure if some of our members have, where people are getting dressed up like they're going out for the evening and taking their garbage out, walking their garbage can to the end of the thing, and full 4-inch heels, and their full get up. And maybe we were having theme days the very first month back in March, and part of April we were doing different themes, but maybe we need to bring those back once a week.
Yes, I hadn't seen those videos. I'll have to look them up.
Yeah,
but, that's the idea. We're still getting on for Zoom, so
yeah,
get dressed up for that a little bit, right?
yeah. Put on a hat.
Oh, totally. V, we've got next V for values. So we already talked a little bit about this one with the committed action, didn't we? Values. So we want to take action that's guided by the core values. So, ask yourself, what do you want to stand for in the face of this crisis? How do you want to treat other people? What do you want to be known for? What sort of person do you want to be? And look for ways that you can sprinkle those values into your day and into what you do for your actions of the day. There's going to be all sorts of obstacles, more obstacles as we go through the crisis. We don't know how it's going to end yet or what's going to happen next. So expect there are going to be more obstacles, but if you're living in accordance with your values, you're going to be able to manage those obstacles a little bit better.
Okay.
So ask yourself, what can you say and do that's going to enable you to look back for years to come and feel proud of how you responded to things. And then we've got I for identify resources. And that's where we're going to go to our, we'll go back to our handout.
I accomplished one of these. I identified my resources.
We've got them. I identified them for you. I wrote them down. So we don't have to remember all of them. First of all, we want to make sure we know where to go for the, things keep changing, don't they? With the guidelines, what the World Health Organization is telling us we should be doing and the CDC, and it's just came out.
Because they don't know either, right? I mean, you got to give them a little bit of credit.
They don't know either. They're doing, I think, the best they can. But so I put those websites on there so we can make sure we're checking, and got a lot of information to sift through on there, but it's good to at least have a few take-home points from it and know what the recommendations are. So try to stay ahead of it a little bit if we can. And the state website is pretty, there's a lot on there as well, ArizonaTogether.org. Have you had a chance to check that one out?
I think I went to it a while ago, but I haven't seen it this week, so I haven't seen their updates.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's growing. There's a lot of different categories, but I did want to emphasize here, since we're talking about mental health right now, they do have a toolkit on there. It's called, I think, Stay Healthy Toolkit, something like that you can go to, that has a lot of, and they've got some guided meditation recordings in there. All of it's free. And they have the emergency numbers that I put some of the crisis hotline numbers on there. They have those as well. They even have a whole program for like a YouTube channel you can go to that's got 8 hours of recorded material for things to do through the day, exercise and the guided meditation and different topics of discussion. So every day there's 8 hours. Of
wow. I'm going to start putting that on instead of programming it ourselves for Channel 77 and get some sleep at night. Right. I'm just kidding.
Next, we have the crisis hotline. So, of course, if you have any kind of, if it's an emergency, if it's a medical emergency, or fire, or something like that, always call 911.
Yeah.
But these are more for the mental health concerns, emotional issues. There are some crisis hotlines for that. So we've got the Southern Arizona crisis line on there, and I did make sure to verify I got the correct number for this, because there are a few different, it's a little hard to find the right number, but that is the correct one. There's a few different ones for Central and Northern Arizona and things like that. But the disaster distress helpline is also, they have 24/7 hotline trained counselors on there that are responding to people who are having difficulties coping with this pandemic. They're on there too. So similar to also the Southern Arizona crisis line is available with counselors as well. And then I put the suicide prevention lifeline on there, so 24/7 support as well for that. And then these other lines are more for non.
Yeah, what's a warm line? I've never seen that expression before.
The warm line, so you can have a little bit of a wait probably to get through. So it's not for anything that's super urgent where you need to talk to someone right away. But they have volunteers on there that it's more for social support, that kind of thing, a little bit less of the urgent. So call the crisis line if you need someone right away, and then warm line is there for, I'm feeling a little down today, or I'm feeling a little lonely, and then have some volunteers. It's about 20 to 30 minute wait, they said right now to get through. But Yeah, and then Pima Council on Aging. This resource is our area agency on aging, and I refer to them so much because they do a lot. They have a lot of their own programs, but they also have some resource directories that they update them all the time. And so really any question you have, I would start there if you have a question about, home health care or things like that.
I think we have some current or former board members of Pima Council on Aging in our membership. So I think we've got some advocates for them for sure.
Pima Council on Aging. Yeah.
Well, not everybody does, but I'm just.
Yeah,
but they're a great organization.
Yep, and there's that helpline that you can also call. So just ask them the question, and they'll refer you where you need to go.
Mm-hmm.
If you're looking for a therapist, Psychology Today has a directory on there, and I just checked recently, and now they have a whole separate section for telehealth. So it tells you now what therapists are doing, can do virtual meetings with you. There's therapists. There's a separate section for psychiatrists as well.
I think that many of our members know this, or maybe already have somebody, but most health insurance covers mental health.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is absolutely
and
something, and Medicare. Mm-hmm. So it would absolutely be a resource that would be available. You don't have to wait until you're in a desperate crisis situation.
Absolutely.
Call somebody earlier.
Yeah, absolutely. So there are resources out there. There's more than what I listed here, but I put these on here as starting points, and then, continue to each have our own growing list of resources. I've got I've got a separate one for activities, but that's for another day.
Yes, that'd be for me. Right?
Yeah, exactly. And the last letter we have there is D for disinfect and distance physically. So it's just a reminder that in the context of all of this and talking about committed action and whatnot, we've still got to remember to do those, stick with the guidelines and make sure we're washing our hands and staying, keeping a distance from people. But that doesn't mean that we have to distance emotionally.
No.
It's still so critical to still make sure we're connecting with our loved ones and keeping that emotional connection there.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you for going through that with us.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It helps.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I invited our members to also contribute any questions they might have for you.
Yeah.
And I did receive a question, and so I'd like to share that with you now. Of course, my phone turned off while we were talking, so
of course.
Here we go. Questions. Oh, where did it go? Any more questions?
I think we had the one about socializing.
Exactly, the one about socializing.
Okay, it was something to do with.
Here we go.
Okay.
The question was, socializing can be strenuous.
Mm-hmm.
And why is that when you're with familiar friends?
Mm-hmm.
And I think especially, in current times, there is some sort of, there's a little bit of peer pressure here and there, even within our community, where some people feel more comfortable socializing and other people do not.
Right.
With regarding the guidelines and all of that. So, but tell us about why socializing can be strenuous.
Well, I think about this one a lot. I think about how much, as mental health professionals, we really do promote that people need to socialize, right? To maintain good mental health. That's a message that comes across a lot. So I thought that was really good that she brought that up, that, well, actually, though, how come there's this sort of, it's almost a little bit of an inconsistency there, right? We know socializing is so important, but why does it make us feel fatigued and tired? So actually, that's not unusual. A lot of people feel that way. And there was a study that looked at this, so what makes people feel fatigued when they socialize, and they found that it boiled down to a few different factors.
If you're with your mother-in-law, I'm just kidding. I'm just tossing some comedy in.
Oh my gosh, no, that's true.
No, I like my
one was the intensity of the interaction. So that could maybe have to do with, so if it's an intense type of conversation you're having, of course, you're going to feel more tired with that than if it's just something more surface level. How many people are you meeting within the context of that interaction? So even on Zoom these days, if we've got all these different people on the screen, right, that could probably be more draining than if it's just a one-to-one.
I will, just to interrupt again.
Yeah, sure.
A lot of my digital interaction or digital assistance for our members has been with getting them on Zoom, getting them on often Zoom, sometimes Google Meet, other ways to do those video conferences. And I don't know that, I think this is true for like my mother, I don't know that people who are unfamiliar with it understand that even younger people don't like it very much.
Right.
Like I had a situation where there was going to be a reunion from this theater that I had worked at, and it started out with maybe 4 or 5 people, and I said, oh yes, I'll attend, and then it snowballed, and it invited all of these people who I knew and liked, but it was so many people on a Zoom call, I knew that it was going to be a square of ... maybe multiple things of scrolling through people. Yeah. And so when the time came, I just said, and I love social interaction, it's what fills up my bucket. And I was like, I'm not doing it. It's just going to be too stressful. I'm going to be frustrated. Right. I won't get any sort of meaningful interaction with any individuals. So I'm going to skip it. Right. And I did that for my own mental health. Yeah. So that's just, I just want people to know that it is exhausting to do Zoom, and you are not, it is not because you're in a certain generation. It is.
I feel that way too. And I just, and I had done a lot of Zoom before all of this. So trying to get used to the angle of the camera and everything. And then I was noticing, the first thing I noticed was, wow, there's this delay, when I'm talking and then someone's responding and it just doesn't feel quite as connected to me. And that is I find that pretty exhausting. It's not the same, but it's the best we have right now. So
that's
we're working with it.
Better than nothing, but not great.
Better than nothing. Yeah. But we could also try other things like maybe varying the types of interactions instead of just doing Zoom all day. Maybe try the telephone, mix it up a little bit, or write a letter. Right? Going back to that again.
Absolutely.
I love that idea that came up with writing letters to people again. Good old fashioned, but there's so much value to having that in hand what someone wrote, and you can reread it again and again. Yeah. It's nice. It's more meaningful. I also was kind of reading an article on this, and they were recommending, try to have the screen off to the side if you're doing Zoom, not face on. And I tried it, and it just felt a little bit more comfortable to me that it wasn't quite so invasive. They said then it feels like you've got an adjacent room over here. You've got a little more space right in front of you. So maybe something to try, adjust it, make sure you're comfortable with where the camera is, and that can help too. And making sure to take transitions between not just the one Zoom call to the other, but take a little stretch break, get off the screen for a while, because there's that eye fatigue that can happen.
Sure.
So,
but anyway, I'm sorry, I got us off on the Zoom, but socializing can be exhausting.
Yeah, and the other thing I was going to mention is just differences between people with being an introvert versus extrovert. Some people I'm guessing you're an extrovert,
a little bit
from what you told me.
A little bit.
You get filled up and energized with that social interaction. Introverts doesn't mean introverts don't like to be around people. That's a myth. No. Introverts like to be around people. They just don't energize based off of being around people. They energize during their time alone. So knowing what you are, right? If you're an introvert or an extrovert, can help you manage your social time a little more. Introverts are going to need to limit the social interaction more, but it doesn't mean it's still important to have some and to have the meaningful time with the people you love.
Yeah.
So
thank you so much, Lynn.
Thank you for having me. This was a delight.
Well, and thank you for being our guinea pig, because we haven't done this before, but I'm sure we'll do it more because we of course have our TMC clinic that's going to be opening.
Yes, I've heard about that.
Yeah, it's
very exciting to have TMC 1 here.
Yes, really exciting. So, but I think that there'll be more opportunities for us to have conversations with medical professionals like yourself.
Absolutely.
Being able to stream into people's rooms, or maybe hopefully in the future attend live.
Yes.
Knock wood, all the things.
Yes. I loved being your first guest. Thank you so much for having me.
And what's really funny is when you come back again, what'll happen is that everybody will say, oh, and then they'll talk to you and you'll realize that you're famous because you were on Channel 77. Yay. Which is a very special kind of fame here at 3900 Sabino Canyon Road.
That is so fun.
All right. Anything else you want to leave us with before we say goodbye?
I think that just pretty much covered it. Just remember to be kind to yourself right now.
Yeah. It's so important.
It is.
Okay. Yep. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Bye, everybody. We'll see you at Live at Lunch.